Morning, boys and girls. Yeah, let's do some diagnosis. Hopefully. So here I have a Fender Deluxe Reverb. It looks like it was a reissue, and someone's gutted it because the reissue looks like this. That's a reissue. It's got circuit boards in it. And this don't. It's got an eyelet board like the old school ones. So someone's gutted it. It's not a Fender job. It's not a Fender hand-wired one that's worth like $6,000 or whatever they are. Someone has probably ordered the pre-punched eyelet board and then possibly ordered all the individual components, but it may have also been a kit. I'm sure someone sells them. There are good and bad kits out there. The ones offered by, I'm trying to remember his name, there's a guy that makes a really cool one. It's got a different layout to the traditional layout, better grounding and a few other things layout wise better considered, but this one here is pretty much exactly the same as the original 65 Deluxe Reverb layout. So they've copied it, looks like pretty much to the wire. I haven't checked every component value to see if they're all identical or not, but it looks pretty damn familiar. They've used some familiar looking components. These look like the Yagio metal film 2 watts that I use. It's probably from DigiKey or Mouser. They're good quality components. They've used Sprague bypass caps everywhere. Expensive, in my opinion, not worth it. But, whatever. They work. They may have made up or possibly purchased pre-made the neon and light dependent resistor optocoupler for the vibrato or tremolo, depending what you want to call it. They've used what look like Panasonic film caps, but I think they're not Panasonic. They're just generics. So I don't know. I wonder where they got them from. These appear to be Mallory. I don't know what Mallory is anymore. I don't know if they actually make them or if they just license the name. That seems to be happening a lot these days. Supposed Mallory caps for the axial film caps. So the issue with this one is that it's my favourite kind of fault, an intermittent fault. One that only happens when you go inside to take a piss. So I had it up and running the other day. Just when it first came in, I didn't even take it out of the box. I just fired it up, and it was good for a while. I don't know, like 20 minutes or something. Then there was a perceptible signal drop, and a little bit more increase in distortion. Not the nice Fendery distortion. It was like it's like one of the stages was dying. So immediately I am thinking it might be a plate resistor in a preamp. I didn't have any meters hooked up to it at the time to proper assess what's going on, so I do today. I'm going to be monitoring the power, the mains power intake, using this cheapo piece of shit, but it's only a rough guide anyway, just to see if it goes through the roof for any reason. That's going to be measuring the plate to ground, or plate to cathode, because the cathodes are ground. Well, they should be in this amp. Yeah, so that's the plate voltage for the output valves, just to see if the high tension is doing anything weird when it dies. It could be the rectifier tube maybe, I don't know. And then I'm monitoring the bias on the 2 output valves, and that's using the anode. It's breaking the connection between the anode and the supply, and monitoring the current flowing on it. So that's plugged into the 40 milliamp input. It's a bit hard to see here. I've got to zoom out a bit. It's plugged into the 400 milliamp current input, and that means that the current is actually flowing through the meter. So the high tension is literally coming in here, leaving there, and then finding its way to the tube. Now that's pretty dangerous for the meter end, because that means if I unplug these out of the multimeter while the amp's switched on or while the caps are still charged, I could electrocute myself by just touching that banana probe, and it's not shielded like your average test lead. Normally your test leads have a little shield over them like that. These don't. So I don't really like these things. They seem, well, they're very overpriced because they know that building them's a pain in the ass, so they just rack up the cost. And there's not really any safety features. Like, I don't know how you get away with selling something like that. I'm paranoid about all the shit that I sell that has even mains voltage on it, and these things running at 400 volts. Like, what's this cable even rated at? 250 volt. Oh, hang on, that's the wrong one. What's this one? Doesn't have a voltage rating on it. Not that I can see anyway. Sorry, you gotta look at my bald head there. So I don't even know if that cable's rated for the voltage that it's going to be copying. I mean, these are octal tubes. You could be running 6550s or something and running at 700 volts. Is that cable rated at 700 volts? Who knows? But anyway, got to use them because there's no cathode resistors and I don't really want to install any. Normally I install cathode resistors on the cathode of the output valves to ground, like a 1 ohm. 1 ohm resistor. You can go 1% if you want, but you don't have to be that accurate. And monitor the cathode current, which tells you essentially the dissipation of the tube. If there is a short to screen or something, it could not be telling you the whole story, but you'd know that anyway, because it'll blow a fuse or something dramatic. So yeah, it does add a bit of screen current to the mix as well, but that just makes you bias a little bit more conservatively, which doesn't hurt. So anyway, back to the amp. So I initially found near the tremolo here, let's see if we can zoom in on that. Yeah, so right here there's a screw and a washer, and it was almost touching, if not already touching, this here. Now that's one of the high voltage areas. That's the supply to the positive side of the neon, which controls the vibrato. So that was possibly shorting, and it was really loose, like it was not even finger tight. So this is a combo amp. As you're playing, that washer was probably vibrating around and periodically shorting out to that too, which could have been one of the reasons, but I don't know. I doubt that's the cause. It seems too easy. These things are never easy. So I might fire it up. We'll just check the bias, which I've already done, but I'll show you. And then I'll piss off those bias probes. Which way are we? Here we go. I'll piss off the bias probes, and because I'm running out of meters, if I'm checking the bias on both, this is all my meters. I've got another meter on the way, another one of that one, the 179, that one, second hander. You can't have too many meters. It's great for diagnosing problems like this that pop up once in a blue moon. You can run over when the amp's doing something weird, and you can see if anything's gone out of range, which is good. The other handy thing with these is they've got a min-max setting. So you can press the min-max button, that's that one there, that one, and it will take its current measurement, put it in memory, and then it will, depending how many times you press it, min, max, or average, it will compare the incoming measurements with what happened when you press that button. Now, if you go max, say you're monitoring the bias of the output tubes, you set it to max. That way, if the bias starts running away, like say in the Marshall TSL series where the boards become conductive, and when they heat up, the bias runs away. The meters will beep at you like crazy because all of a sudden this measurement that you've pressed to set it to is rising, and it's a good way of monitoring an amp for a long period while you're doing other work. So I do that quite often. So we might fire it up. Just feed it a little bit of signal just to check that it's going alright, but then we'll kill the signal and check the bias and adjust if necessary. So I've got this here going to the plate. That's connected to the ground, which just happens to be a convenient spot, which is the artificial center tap that he's created for the heaters, bouncing off coming off the lamp there to the chassis. Some of these soldering, some of the solder joints to ground look a bit sus, but they seem to be mechanically pretty good. But I'll check them. He's sort of, you can see he's scratched it up. It appears to be some kind of zinc and eel coated steel. So that'll be the stock Fender chassis. Yeah, I don't know. I'll check the grounds, but they seem alright. He's disconnected that and soldered it straight to the chassis, which is cool. Whoever did this, he seemed to know what he's doing. It wasn't just a kit builder. I reckon he's probably a full-time tech, if not almost full-time tech. He or she. There's a few things like dodgy soldering, but I've built one of these amps before and you get a bit over it towards the end, so it doesn't end up 100% pretty, but everything works and reliable. The only thing I'm thinking with these film caps here, the leads are really short to the solder joints, so it's not exactly a problem, but the problem is when you solder them, the heat goes back into the lead, and these are just basically like rolls of copper and aluminium and plastic film rolled over and over and over, and that creates the two plates in the capacitor. Now, plastic being plastic, it melts at some point, so heating the leads up too much could melt the plastic insulation within the capacitor, and can either change the value or create a short or a weakness that will allow it to short under its rated voltage or very close to it. So I try to leave the leads a little bit longer, and if I can, get some mini hemostats, they're called, little reverse tweezers. Like when you let go of them, they close, as opposed to let go, they open, and they work like little heat sinks. So when you're soldering, you get in and out pretty quick, and if any heat does go back up the lead, which is going to be a bit longer anyway, the hemostat soaks it up. So they're just another step of reliability for not much effort. There's a few little burns and stuff on leads. I don't know if that's from the build or from someone diagnosing this problem or trying to. You can see the barrel of the soldering irons melted the insulation there, and that's on the reverb return. No, send. Yeah, reverb send. Not a biggie, it hasn't broken through. There's a few spots where there's like solder dags that have been left in the chassis, and stuff like that's not real good. I haven't looked at the underside of that. That's a massive project to lift that. So I don't know. There's nothing to suggest anything's wrong under there as of yet, but if we need to, we'll lift it, which I really hope we don't. the way this has been done, they've directed all the wiring through the board, under the board, and then back out another hole. So this thing would be a nightmare to lift. All the resistors over here are carbon comp. I personally don't think it makes enough of a difference to matter that much whether you use carbon comp or metal film. Metal film's quieter. Carbon comp, people say, has a tone. I generally don't bother arguing with those people because there's no point. But they've got carbon comps over here, so I'll check the values of them, make sure they haven't drifted, all of them. I don't know, let's fire it up, check the bias and have a listen. Alright, power on. Got the speaker plugged in. I was going to put the load in, but I'll give it a quick listen as well. Oh, it'd help if I turn the meters on, eh? Alright, so you can see the plate voltage rising there. The current's going up. That's the wattage from the PowerPoint. I'm just hearing signal now, and that's settling in at about 430 plate. And that's a worry because that... Did I have that set right? Oh no, it's on AC. That made me panic there for a minute. Alright, DC, we want DC current. Yeah, that makes more sense. Alright, so that's, we want about 19 for that voltage. I thought they were saying 425, they're saying 429 because I think the display's fucked up a bit. So 430, we want about 19 milliamps. So I might, a little bit imbalanced, but not too bad. Might just knock that back a touch. Take the highest one down to 20, just to see what it does over time. But we've got signal. It's going into the normal input. Might just turn that off. Crank the volume up, see if we've got any microphonics anywhere. A little bit of hum, but that's pretty cranked. Volume's a little bit scratchy. I had that on mine too. I used a combination of CTS and Burns pots, and I found even though there was no voltage present on the volume, using the CTS, there was a tiny bit of scratchiness, and even after cleaning them, even though they were new, it sort of didn't go away. It was bugger all, it was like barely noticeable, but it was there. You can hear it there a bit. These are just alpha pots. Alpha have different quality levels too. They seem to have Chinese and Japanese ones. I don't know if they're all made in China, but I don't know, there seems to be different levels of quality in alpha. Crank it right up. A little bit of microphonics there in the tone stack, but that's pretty normal. Of course, the hum would be lowered if they shielded the input, the grid connection for V1. But that wouldn't be vintage cool, would it? Have a shielded wire in there, it's not covered in cloth. So no one does it. Well. We'll just check around the phase inverter area as well. a little bit of microphonics, but nothing really out of the ordinary. The reverb returns a pretty high gain area too, so you get a little bit of craziness around there too. That screw's a bit loose as well. Let's chuck it into the second input. Oh. Second input on the normal channel. Nice and positive click there. They look like switchcraft jacks. Doesn't seem that old. It's probably only, I don't know, it's rejigging jobs, probably a year or two old. Oh, what was it going to do? Oh yeah. Turn the signal Jenny back on. Doesn't appear to be any problems with the jacks. That's sweet. What's my bias doing? It's settled down a bit actually, it's gone down. That seems... it's got a weird overtone to it. Sounds almost like a triangle wave, so I'll try it with guitar, but that sounds a bit sharp and something might be going on there. I'll have a look on the scope. I mean, they're bright amps, but it's supposed to be a sine wave, so something's distorting there. Just check the reverb. Tons of reverb. I'll check the trem. You gotta have the foot switch in for that. Hang on. Yep, appears to be alright. Sorry to deafen you all there, if anyone's watching. So I guess nothing much for it, but leave it on for a while and monitor it, which is pretty boring for a video, isn't it? What I might do is put it aside, feed it some signal, put the load on it so I don't have to listen to 400 Hertz all afternoon, and put the meter on there with the min setting, so if the signal drops, I can come over and see what's going on. So yeah, might do that. And we'll get on to some other repairs. So let's power it down. Look, I might leave it on for a little bit, just see if we can simulate the fault. Be nice while I got all the meters and shit out. It is a bit of a pain in the ass plugging all this crap in. So the bias looks to be pretty stable. just check the tubes for a bit of microphonics, eh? Let's turn it down a bit. Bring the gain up. Wondering if that screw shorting out was the only problem. All the connections to the pot look pretty good. It leads me to think that whoever's doing it, or whoever built it, knew what they were doing. All the wires are properly wrapped around. There's no tacked solder joints. Don't you love an intermittent fault? It only fails when you give it back to them. I think it might have been that screw, but off cam, I'll set it up for a long time and just check it over a long period. It's not going to do it while I'm watching it, I guarantee it. They never do. So what, we're doing a 5.5 volts, that's not going to kill me. It's unplugged from the wall. I do have the cover off the capacitors on the bottom. So that's something you've got to be very careful of. I've been caught out by that in the past. I was working on a Fender, it was my old 75. You might have seen a write-up on it, but this was years ago. I've had the 75, Fender 75 for about, since I was about probably not even 15. And I'll take the bias probes off. And it always sounded like shit. And I wanted to wait until I knew more about electronics to touch it and play with it. So I had to go probably 10 years ago at trying to make it sound better, and just sort of it worked, so I just left it. And I thought I'll figure out one day how to make it sound really good, and I won't really touch it until I know what I'm doing, so I'll do it then. So I opened it up probably a year ago. Still don't know what I'm doing, but I do more than I did back then. And saw the work I did in there, and oh Jesus, it's good to look back on your old work, as it makes you feel like you've achieved a lot. You look at how shocking it was. But I'll probably say the same thing in another 10 years. So anyway, I was working on the thing. I took the cover, the doghouse they call it, this thing here, like a metal tray. I took that off, and then I waited for some parts to turn up, and they took about a week to get here or something like that. And it was on the bench the whole time. I wasn't doing much work in guitar at the time, and I was a joinery shop I was working at, so I'd just do the electronics as a hobby on the side. And I fired it up again just to take a few measurements before changing these parts out, and I've gone to flip the unit over, and straight away my hand, it was sitting around this way, so my hand's come over and hit that, which is all the high voltage nodes. And scared the shit out of me, and screamed fuck at the top of my lungs and dropped the amp on the bench and smashed a tube. And yeah, didn't do that again. It was more embarrassment than actually shocking. Well, I couldn't believe I did it. So anyway. Alright, so I'll just clear the bench a bit. Get on to the next one. Don't have to clean the bench too much because it's friggin' tiny. Still getting over a cold from sounding a bit snotty. Alright, so we've got Peavey Classic 20 head. There you go. It's a brand newie and it's already fucked. So yeah, go Peavey. I had this one come in over Christmas. I think so. And I couldn't get it to do anything wrong. So I said, oh, I don't know, are you sure your cables are good? Returned it. Thought it might have been just the tube was not quite in its socket right because I moved them around a bit. But it's come back because it was just dropping out again, just like the Fender. And I couldn't get it to do it. And I checked everything, tested everything okay. Generally, if it's dropping out and it's a tube, they said it might just be a tube. If it's dropping out and it's a tube, it tends to drop out and stay dropped out, you know, because the tube's on the way out, not drop in and out and come back for a month and go away a month later. So let's fire it up and go full power. Fuck it, why not? 8 ohms. I checked it in the store and it was doing it in the store. It was playing up, so hopefully it keeps playing up so we can figure out what's going on. Yep, it's already on. Feed it some signal. Turn it down a bit first, eh? Pre-post. Set the EQ to middle. Turn the reverb down. Turn her on. Got signal. Of course we do. It's about the level that it should be considering what I'm feeding it as well. Bit of percussive maintenance. Check the second channel. Ridiculous levels of distortion on tap. Check the reverb, which is probably digital. Yeah, got reverb. Oh, fucking hell. Do I open it? Yeah. Oh, Jesus, that sounded terrible. T1 and T2. It appears to have some kind of... See the two little lights there? Go green. Huh. It's in a possibly be tube failure lights. Yeah, I don't know. Let's power it down and have a look in the guts. See if we can make it fail. Might be another day of nothing repairs, eh? just doing the amps at the moment because I've got some finishing jobs to do. Guitar necks, broken things. And I'm just putting them off because I hate doing them. Tiny little lacquer chip the size of your pinky fingernail. And if it's not perfect, it gets sent back. And once you've touched up guitar lacquer, you pretty much can't do anything with it that day. So if anything goes wrong with it, or it bubbles, or it doesn't look right, you just got to leave it for another day and not even touch it until tomorrow. So it's massive, disheartening waste of time sometimes, finishing work and cosmetic touch-ups, that kind of thing. It can be really disheartening. So that's why I'm putting them off and doing amps, because amps are fun. They're like a little puzzle. Gonna come out, champ? Oh, no, you're not. You got other screws attached, don't you? That's weird. Oh fuck, they go all the way through the chassis. You can see the screw coming up there through the cage nut. There's another two at the front. They're all the way through the cab. Pissy little MDF cab. Chipboard cab. Now let's whack them out. Peavey used to be not glorious amps, but fucking workhorses. They just would not die. And like everyone, that's no longer the case. China sucked them in, and now they're shit. Alright, now I've got to watch this because I don't want to break them. My two special custom blocks. The fuck? What's that off? It's like carbon. Is that off the Fender? No. Don't know. Feels like graphite. Must have done something here I forgot about. Alright, you little bastard. Where are you? I'm initially suspect on these connectors here. They're not all lined up. Some of them, that one looks like it's not even on all the way. Let's just zoom in a bit so you can have a gaze. Which way am I going? That way. Yeah, so those spade connectors there. That one there in particular is halfway off. That black shit on the inside too. That must be off the inside of the case. Yeah. Look at that. That's fucking carbon paint to shield it. And the shit's coming off like that. That's fucking... Fuck you, Peavey. You got conductive paint coming off in little chips and dust, and you got fucking surface mount parts there which are smaller than the chips of paint coming off, which are conductive. What's that gonna fucking do? Just don't buy any amps anymore, they all fucking suck. Now I've got cancer causing black shit all over my hands. Good thing I don't live in California, eh? Stinks too. Oh, coffee time. Alright, so This thing, I think I remember looking it up last time. Oh, look at that. They got the classic fake pilot light with just an LED stuck in it. Black Star do that too. Only the best. So, yeah, this thing's got an attenuator, which is those big power resistors there attached to the output board. That's your speaker output there. And there's 1, 2, 3. I better check for voltages first, eh? I know it drains, but I'll just check it anyway. Alright, where's the ground? Right there. Which tubes am I looking at? 3. Pin 7 for the 0.7 volts, which is not going to kill me even if I licked it. Let's check on the standby switch. 1.5 volts. So even the res cap's got 1.5. Nothing, mate. Alright, so let's fire it up again and we'll have a tap around. I'll see if I can make it fail. If I can see it actually fail when I touch something, it makes me a happy boy. I hate fixing what I think it is and not being 100% sure that that's what the problem is and having to send it back out again due to time constraints or whatever. You don't get standby Peavey, you just get switched straight on. I've got signal going in, 400 Hertz, and there we are. So I'll turn that down again so I don't deafen you. I can still just hear it. We'll have a poke and a prod. Which should I do first, the poke or the prod? There's a USB output on this thing. It's got a little Texas Instruments chip down there and a crystal. So that there will be analog to digital converter. That's probably the USB controller. And then down here would be the analog to digital converter, probably on that little chip there, although that might be the reverb. Is that the reverb? Yeah, probably. Yeah, got some traces disappearing over there, so that'll be the reverb. A little chip by Nemesis Technology. Sound pretty badass. There's a Cirrus Logic chip on there as well. So one of them's probably the digital converter and one of them's probably the DSP, or it might be self-contained. There's a relay down there. Which I'm pretty sure is not the problem, because when it was doing it in the shop we flicked channels back and forth and it just kept being intermittent. It could just be tube sockets. They appear to be fine. Moving them gives no noise at all. Preamp tubes. It's good having you guys watch. If I ever get electrocuted, you'll know to call the ambulance on me. Nothing there. Awesome. Can't make it fail. Only fails in the shop. Yeah, well, I don't know. I guess I'll let this one heat up for a while too and see if anything goes wrong. It was cold in the shop when it was doing it wrong, but not a very entertaining video, was it? Yeah, it's interesting. It's got a, because it's got the load, these resistors here, it's got a speaker defeat button. So because it's got the USB output, supposedly speaker emulated, what does it say? Microphone simulated USB audio. So I don't know if they've got some DSP in there to put a speaker simulation EQ curve on it or something. But point being, when you're recording or listening via the USB output or headphones, yeah, it's got headphones as well, you can turn the speaker off. So I mean, the switch sounds to be working pretty good, so I don't know, I'm just immediately curious when there's any switching in the speaker end of the circuit, because it's under a bit more current demand and switch contacts can go a bit funky, but it appears to be alright too. The soldering looks okay. It's your typical lead-free solder, weird sort of cloudy look, but and being that there's a mixture of through-hole components and surface mount, there was wave soldering as well as pick and place and reflow probably happening. Some of the solder connections on the valve sockets, you can tell they're hand soldered. There's still flux left over, whereas there isn't on the rest of the connections, be they through hole or surface mount. So they've come in and done them by hand. I guess it's pretty hard to wave solder large components like that, but they don't look shit, they don't look cracked. I haven't lifted the board to look at the other side because that's a nightmare. Yeah, it doesn't have that terrible soldering that you see on real low end amps. I mean, it is still a Peavey, so it's not a Strauss or whatever, where it's just they don't care, 50% of them fail and that's how it is. They just make another 50. Yeah, I don't know. Too hard. I'm going back to bed.